Well, my next guest was inside her RV home in Kerr County when the waters came rushing in. Fortunately, Julia Hatfield and her husband were able to escape, but all 33 RVs in their community were completely swept away. But that wasn't even the worst of it for Julia. Her heart sunk when she started hearing a little boy screaming and then looked up and witnessed him floating downstream after being caught in the waters. Julia felt helpless.
I was about to jump in and my husband had to hold me back. He said, "You're gonna go too, and there's nothing you can do if you jump in." I didn't know how I was gonna live with that. And thankfully, by the end of the day yesterday, I saw his face online and he had been rescued.
Wow, I actually didn't even know that. Julia Hatfield joining us now with not only your story of survival, but you actually saw this little boy online. Give us all the context. Do you know who he is? Tell us how you knew it was him.
So that night, everything happened so quickly. We just were unable to do so much what we wanted to do to help our neighbors. We did what we could, and then at some point, the rescue workers had to take it over. But the water was so strong that I was screaming, and I kept saying, there's a child." And next thing I know, I saw him from up above floating downstream. And when I ran down, I mean, he was gone at that point. And so in those moments, you wonder, what could I have done? And my husband was just saying, "Julia, do not get in the water," because there just was nothing to be done. And so that following afternoon, a friend of mine said a little boy was found who was washed away from an RV park. And I just had this gut feeling, and I looked it up. And sure enough, the little boy I'd been describing to my family all day was him in the photo.
So do you know if he's alive or
Yeah.
was that okay? It was proof of life. Oh my gosh, I
Yeah.
hesitated for a second because okay. So have
Yeah.
you been able to talk to him I know there's a lot going on, but I mean, obviously we're fascinated by this story and didn't know the outcome. Have you been able to
Yeah.
connect with him?
I haven't been able to connect with him. I am afraid, from what I'm seeing online, that he might have lost a lot of his family. So as we go through this point where we're just kind of looking through piles and trying to give people closure, um, after all this dies down, however long it takes, which is going to be a while, I would love to reconnect with him and see that he's okay and has support going forward.
Well, let me tell you, we'd love to hear about it, Julia, so keep us updated. If you don't mind, I'd like to go back to that night because you talk about the dozens of RVs that were around you that got swept away. You said that if your husband wouldn't have been awake, it could have been a completely different outcome for you two. Tell us what happened and when did you know that it was serious and you had to get out of there?
Well, my husband had stayed awake. The rain was coming down really hard, and so he was making sure we didn't have any leaks in our RV. And he started to hear screaming, and he looked out and saw that the lower level of the park that's about 4 feet lower than us. The RVs were already they had water up to the doors, and he woke me up immediately. And if he hadn't been there, it could have been a very different story.
And what did you do at that point? He woke you up, and what exactly did you guys do?
Um, in that moment, honestly, I thought, well, what do you grab in this situation? And not many things came to mind. You'd think there'd be just these special items, but the only thing I could think of were instruments. And so I threw them in the car, and we had to drive it to the top of the hill before the floodwaters came any further. And after that, it was like, what are we doing to help? There was a lady who was really upset who just moved in the park the day before. She had just bought her RV, and she was just asking for our help, and we were trying to help her. And at some point, my husband had to say, "You have to let it go." And I think a lot of people were in denial about what was happening because it was just happening so fast, a little too fast to process.
Sure, no. And these are the stories that we've been hearing. And so, okay, now that you're able to sort of take a breath and just sort of, I guess, think about everything that has happened, How are you and your husband discussing moving forward, rebuilding? Will you stay in Texas? How are you and others sort of thinking about what's next?
Well, Texas is my home, and RV life has been my dream for a long time. We're newlyweds, and we just absolutely love having an RV. So I know that's definitely a next step. But honestly, the biggest thing right now, we've been going back and forth to try and help find people. And so there's so many conversations that we haven't had yet. And I hope that RVing is in our future at some point. But at this point, it's all about going back and doing whatever we can.
Well, I'll tell you what, Julia, if you guys can survive this at the beginning of your relationship, you can survive anything, and you have each other. And what a
Yeah.
blessing that your husband stayed awake. You tell us, congratulations to that. We complain about not getting a lot of sleep, but in times like this, what a blessing. Please
Yes.
let us know if you connect with that little boy, Julia. We'd love to hear how that goes. All right.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
We appreciate you, Julia.